Basically, if Percy Jackson had anything to go off of, just believe what you think makes the most sense, and assuming that the Greeks got it right and the mist makes us see what we want, you'll see what you want. At a job I used to work, I had someone accuse me of being a cult leader because I named my most inner circle of best friends the Henryati. This article looks like we have an actual cult leader here. Let's find out if this really is a cult. But first, give this video a like, subscribe for daily videos, and be sure to comment what you think as we go. Blazing eye sees all, and God struck by the spirit, by Tara Isabella Burton. What's the point of believing anyway? Nearly 2 decades after Christopher Hitchens published God is Not Great, faith seems to be making a comeback. Ross Douthat, a New York Times columnist, has argued for faith as both a social and existential good, or our orientation toward something larger than ourselves as something central to our human identity. Meanwhile, religious faith has found not only a generation of new adherents, but also new gurus with influential figures ranging from self-help impresario Jordan Peterson to tech titan Peter Thiel, claiming interest in potential faith in traditional Orthodox Christianity. And apparently, wait, is this just... No, there's gotta be more of the article. This can't just be the... My bad. Okay, here we go. Do we seek out something greater because we're desperate to believe in something after death, the false hope Karl Marx derided as the opiate of the masses? Or, when it comes to the seeming God-shaped hole in so many of our hearts, is there in fact a there? Well, I kind of like to take the Percy Jackson approach that the Greeks had it right, and mortal minds just interpret it as whatever makes sense to us. So, for those of you who haven't read The Lightning Thief, the original book, not the Disney Plus show, when Percy, Grover, and Annabeth arrived in the underworld, Percy recognized this pastor in one of the lines for processing. So basically, in the world of Percy Jackson, this pastor was a crooked one who abused his power for money. He died in a car crash and he was in the underworld. And Percy was like, wait, what is he seeing if he believes in a different afterlife than us? And then Grover was like, sorry, I'm trying to remember what he said. Human minds work differently than half-bloods and satyrs. The mist just lets them see whatever they believe. So, I believe that... So I'd rather think that the Greeks got it right, and whatever we believe afterward is that. Anyway, let's continue and find out more about the potential cult leader they featured up there. Readers of Leah Sodhile's Blazing Eyes See All might be forgiven for coming to the former conclusion. Writing with piercing detail, Ms. Sodhile, a journalist and the author of When the Moon Turns to Blood, about an extremist couple on trial for murder, has produced a chilling and often lurid account of the controversial religious movement Love Has Won, also known as the Galactic Federation of Light, and later, Joy Reigns. The author chronicles the rise and fall of a social media driven spiritual community. The word cult remains controversial among scholars of religion, led by Amy Carlson, who claim not only to be in the reincarnation of historical luminaries such as Joan of Arc, Harriet Tubman, and the 19th century occultist Helena Blavatsky, but to be, in fact, Mother God herself, a deity capable of curing cancer with the power of love alone. Alright, I just need to see who the... Okay, Amy Carlson is the potential cult leader who is referred to as Mother God. As an expose of derangement, Ms. Sawdile's book is fascinating. Carlson, who died in 2021 at the age of 45, remains a cipher, as would-be gurus often do in books of this genre. But Ms. Sawtile uses Carlson and Love Has Won more broadly to examine one element of the current religious landscape, where ever-growing numbers of spiritual but not religious and religiously unaffiliated people seek meaning, purpose, ritual, and community in loosely defined, New Age-influenced narratives of flowing energy, inner light, and the search for divinity within. Honestly, if these are the kinds of people that I would get lumped into by referring to myself as spiritual but not religious. Maybe I should just declare myself a Buddhist at this point, and then I can say I'm a Buddhist because I believe in minimal materialism and the Four Noble Truths and all that. And because I got Airbender for my Avatar The Last Airbender bending quiz result. In many ways, Carlson is a textbook example of this distinctly contemporary tendency. She got her start online, Miss Sawdile tells us, posting as a regular on New Age message boards before becoming convinced that she was not merely spiritually gifted, but perhaps God herself. She used the internet, too, to build Love Has Won, recruiting a handful of in-person followers to her Colorado compound and a mass of social media devotees who religiously watched her near constant live streams and dutifully contributed to the cost of Love Has Won's upkeep, including $88 etheric surgery, spiritual healing sessions. If this is not a cult, I don't know what is. Well, I guess let's read a little further to find out if she requires people to isolate from friends and family, which, according to Tim Pool, that's what really makes a cult. Isolating from friends and family because, well, you choose to do that if the cult leader encourages it. Me? Just to be clear, I would never encourage anyone watching this video to cut themselves off from friends and family unless they're doing something that can only be described as that bad. And I'm talking serious, legitimate cases of abuse. But other than that, make friends, stay in touch with your family. I'm trying to think of something to say about how I'm just some kind of parasocial relationship at best if you watch me regularly. Or if you're watching me for the first time. I'm all about having a community here, but feel free to be part of other communities. And when you come back here, feel free to share what you learned from there. It's like Iro said, if you take it from only one source, it will grow rigid and stale. So too, Ms. Sawtile reminds us, did Carlson capitalize on much wider cultural and political vibe shifts? Love Has Won's fluid theology incorporated a blend of timeless conspiracy theories, references to the lost city of Atlantis and the equally apocryphal continent of Lemura, as well as more recent ones. Carlson's influences included QAnon, coronavirus vaccine conspiracy theories, and the ever magnetic persona of Donald Trump, whom Carlson insisted had been her father in a previous life. There's just one problem with that. Donald Trump doesn't have any deceased children. He has not outlived any of his children. Actually, let's look this up to confirm that. All right, luckily we have this Wikipedia article, Family of Donald Trump. So these are his past wives and his current wife. Children. Trump has 5 children from 3 marriages. Don Jr., Ivanka, and Eric, and then Tiffany, and then Barron. Yeah, I don't see anything on here about. Let's just use Control F. All right, grandparents, siblings. Yeah, nothing about. Yeah, I don't see anything about any children of his who died. If you think it's possible he could have just never mentioned one, you can let me know in the comments down below, though. I'm pretty sure there would probably be information out there, even if he didn't bring it up at any point before. Like, let's say that. I was about to say maybe there was a miscarriage that one of his wives had that he never brought up, but more than likely, it would have come out at some point in the last decade since he jumped into politics. I'm pretty sure either one of his past wives would have brought up by now, or someone would have dug up that information. So that's how I know that that claim is just straight up ridiculous. Getting back into the article, Ms. Sawtile treats the story of Love Has Won as a narrative of America's collective ID. Or is that supposed to be id? The psychology term. A veritable fever dream of cultural anxieties and desires mistrust of government and scientific institutions, and above all, our shared desire to transcend ourselves and become our own deities. Carlson may be seen by many as a cult leader, but she was also just another wellness guru taken to the extreme. She hawked her spiritual counseling on YouTube, appeared on Dr. Phil, in what seemed like a wrenchingly abortive attempt at a family intervention, and ultimately died of what appears to have been a combination of anorexia, alcoholism, and poisoning from the colloidal silver she touted as an alternative to the COVID-19 vaccine. Listen to wellness gurus if you want to, but talk to your doctor about anything like that. Don't listen to wellness gurus like that. Don't listen to me when it comes to health advice. Talk to your doctor if you trust him or her, and if you don't trust his or her judgment, find a different doctor. Anyway, getting back to the article, comparing Amy Carlson with her sister Chelsea, who found traditional religious faith after a tragic stillbirth, Miss Sawdell writes that for Chelsea, God was in the people around her. For Amy, God was in herself. What could be more American than that? And it's got another book cited here. If Miss Sawdell's book explores the dark side of making ourselves into gods, Kelsey Osgood's Godstruck offers a lyrical, philosophically astute account of a handful of conversations to traditional religious faith, including, we soon realize, her own. Few, if any, of the women Ms. Osgood profiles fit the road to Damascus conversion narrative in which an unbeliever one day sees the light and moves immediately to faith. Instead, they wrestle, at times, painfully, with the great existential questions of life, their own upbringings and different ways of seeing the world, and find God to be the closest thing to an answer. Ms. Osgood, a journalist and the author of How to Disappear Completely on Modern Anorexia, weaves her own story into lovingly rendered accounts of the lives of, among others, Angela, a rationalist turned Quaker, Christina, a cradle Catholic drawn from childhood to the Amish, Hannah, an orphan of Czech descent who finds solace in Islam and moves to Saudi Arabia to practice in community, and Oriane, a young woman of Mennonite and Druze descent who becomes a Catholic nun. I've met some of the women profiled here socially and interviewed Leah Libresco Sargent, who appears briefly in the book for my own writing. But it is Ms. Osgood's journey that proves to be the book's emotional through line. In particular, Ms. Osgood's struggle with anorexia provides a compelling contrast in values. What life-encompassing compulsions might we be drawn to, and how do we know the difference between those that point us to where we're supposed to be and those that take us down the wrong path? In one of the book's most moving passages, Miss Osgood writes of a moment she is tempted, in the midst of her sickness, to treat her anorexia like a religion, a source of individual affirmation and choice, and fantasizing about making the case that devoting my life to a thing I could argue, convincingly, was spiritual, countercultural, and politically salient, was no different from devoting my life to any other cause. It was her choice, and asking me to go against it would be asking me to deny my own deepest desire, which was, in a weird way, denying me of my truth, and therefore wrong. But then she rebelled. Something within, my conscience, my soul, whatever you want to call it, reacted quickly, Miss Osgood writes. It felt like some soft, subtle kick from far away, something purely reactive, both inside and outside my mind. It may or may not have been the experience of God exactly, but it was a vision of life outside the confines of a deepest desire that may not, in fact, have been from the deepest part of who Miss Osgood is. If blazing eyes see all as a cautionary tale about making ourselves into gods, Godstruck is an affirming one about the value of understanding ourselves as part of a wider community of seekers. A community that, in asking the big questions about God, the universe, everything, is also doing the most important work of being human. Acknowledging that these questions have mattered for the entirety of human history, Ms. Osgood suggests, can bring us into a far more authentic relationships with ourselves than any $88 etheric cleansing could provide. How happy is any given human supposed to be? Ms. Osgood wonders. Who decides where the line between acceptable suffering and unacceptable suffering is, and what kinds of suffering are worthwhile and what kinds are not? Ultimately, is suffering a glitch in the system, or, in the manner of the Buddha, was suffering the system itself? All life includes suffering of some kind. Honestly, that was a lot to take in, so I'm trying to think of my own points. Basically, if Percy Jackson had anything to go off of, just believe what you think makes the most sense, and assuming that the Greeks got it right and the mist makes us see what we want, you'll see what you want. Or maybe don't want if you ended up in the bad afterlife. Or maybe you'll just not perceive anything and your soul will just stand in the fields of asphodel for all eternity if you truly believe that there's nothing after this life. Anyway, let's wrap this article up. Ms. Osgood gives us no final answers. She does give us the tools to see how the process of questioning might bring her subjects closer to the truth. Then again, maybe love has won offered its adherents something too. One of the most disturbing passages in Ms. Sawdile's book comes from an ex-lover of Amy Carlson's, one among many of her interchangeable father gods. He grants what he believes to be Carlson's mental illness, and that neither he nor Carlson were, in fact, divine. And yet, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I came out of it a way better person. It's a point Ms. Sawtile doesn't press, but one wonders what Miss Osgood might have made of him for one more entry in Godstruck. Well, if he got something out of Love Has Won, if it helped him get his life on track or something like that, I guess it can't be all bad. I mean, this article didn't say if Love Has Won said to isolate from friends and family. I'm actually gonna look that up. Love Has Won. All right, there's an HBO documentary that they did. Okay, I'm just gonna ask Google. Did Love Has Won encourage isolation from friends and family? Oh, come on. Where's the AI oversight when you need it? Oh, here we go from the Independent. The cult encourages them not to have contact with their family and friends, and they just become a completely rewired, different person. The reason you can say that the guy at that job said was wrong about me being a cult leader is because I never encouraged any of my Henryati members to cut off relationships with friends and family. When I say friends, I mean other friends. So, like the birthday man from a few videos ago, I'm happy that he's using Bumble BFF to make new friends. I really gotta try that out myself, just out of curiosity. Not that I think I particularly need new friends. Like, I'm very happy with the Henryati as is, but maybe it would be worth trying, so what do you think? Do you think that the guy at that job was right about me being a cult leader? Do I really look like the kind of guy who would run a cult? That wasn't a rhetorical question, by the way. Anyway, give this video a like, subscribe for daily videos, and I'll see you soon.